Hello and Happy New Year. How are you doing? Have you had a lovely Christmas? It's been such a long time since I've been here making a video and I've been dying to get back. Just a lot happening. And anyway, I'm here today to talk about something that's really juicy, quite fun, and related to Christmas. Was Jesus a Leo? Was he born in August? I didn't really expect to be talking about this, but it started when we got this thing through the door. It's like a little local newsletter thing for our town, and there was a little bit in it, and it was Noel, my husband, actually, that said, "Oh, that's not very Christian," which immediately caught my interest. And it's talking about this conjunction that happened in the skies. So there's a little picture. Let me just show you the picture if you can see it there. Venus and Jupiter. And it says, a spectacular conjunction did occur on the 10th of August in 2 BC. Actually, there's more before it, but I'm not going to read you all of that. It's I don't think we need all of that. This is just getting to the juicy bit. A spectacular conjunction did occur on the 10th of August in 2 BC when the two brightest planets, Venus and Jupiter, seem to almost be touching each other in the sky. You see there, it's trying to sort of show that there, look. That would make it brighter than usual. This conjunction has been suggested as possibly the Star of Bethlehem, viewed by the Magi. This is a little bit different to the story that we're normally told, although it does mention the Magi in the Bible. But what is interesting is that it takes it to the 10th of August. And, you know, that immediately reminded me of the Lionsgate Portal. And why I'm so interested in this is because I knew nothing about this growing up as a Christian, never heard of Lionsgate. It's all to do with astronomy and astrology and stuff that we're not supposed to know about or look into. But my own son was born actually on the 8th of August, which is the height of that portal opening. So the Lionsgate, I believe, is a kind of, it's like a cosmic holiday. It lasts for about 12 days, I think, quite a while, but it's supposed to be at its most powerful in terms of being, a vibrational upgrade and a time for manifesting and all of that. At the 8th of August, that's its pinnacle. And that was the time at which my son was born, 8th of the 8th. And so the thought that Jesus might also have been born around that time, 10th of August, is really quite fascinating. And so I did a little bit of research, as they say, and found out that at the time of Jesus, it would have been the Julian calendar. I'm saying all of this, and some of you will be shouting at the screen because you know a lot more about this than I do. So yeah, tell me in the comments if I'm wrong and bring your knowledge to it because it's fascinating. The Julian calendar was introduced, I think, about 45 AD, something like that. So that's what would have been being used at the time of Jesus' birth. The Gregorian calendar, which we use now, came a lot later. And the difference is that the Julian calendar had just 29 days, I do believe. And so the switchover meant that each year, the gap between the dating of the Julian and Gregorian calendar gets wider. Okay, so you don't really need to know all that. It's just that it's fascinating that this might have been the time of Jesus' birth. Now, most scholars, if you go and Google it, will say, no, it was dated between the time of his date of birth is actually between 4 and 6 BC. Is it BC or AD? I can't remember. Let me look. It's because they look at Herod. They look at when Herod was born, and they say BC, it is. They believe that he died in 4 BC, and it mentions Herod, doesn't it, in the biblical narrative, Herod and the massacre of the infants. But then there are others who contest that, his date of birth, date of death, Herod's date of death is unknown, really. And also, more importantly, that's a legend anyway, and that was just sort of included in there, and it's not historically so accurate. Now, others take a dating from Luke. And in Luke's Gospel, you have mention of Caesar, what was it? Caesar Tiberius, is it? Who had been Caesar for 15 years or something like that. He'd been 15 years. And then it mentions that Jesus, at around the age of 30, when he started his ministry. And they try to date it back from the Roman historical records of Tiberius, and when Jesus was around 30. Now, the fact that it says around 30 means it's so vague. It's also vague anyway. And they get a dating at, I think, around September time of 3 BC. Okay, so we now have, with the Herod legend between 4 and 6 BC, we have with the Luke dating and the historian records at 3 BC, September something, 3 BC. But with this looking completely as a sort of stellar occurrence that they can have records on, of how to account for this bright star in the sky, bringing us to August 2 BC. I find that really exciting, because it seems to me that we're getting closer to when we're starting dating history before Christ and after Christ. I thought that was just really interesting. And Lionsgate, what does that remind us of? It reminds us of a lion and the Narnia story, and Aslan in Narnia, who was a Christ figure, not apparently intended as an allegory, as people say, oh, it's an allegory for Christ. C.S. Lewis himself said, no, it's actually a literal incarnation, just as in the biblical narrative you have God incarnate as a human being. In his story of Narnia, you have Aslan as a beast, so an incarnation in beast form, in animal form, because he's got a speaking animal, a speaking lion. And there are motifs that pattern the Christ story. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Now, Christmas present that I wanted to tell you about and show you. It's really nerdy, isn't it, that this would be my exciting Christmas show and tell. The New Testament by a man called David Bentley Hart. Oh, I love David Bentley Hart. This is a translation. He is alive today. He's a theologian. Well, no, he isn't. He doesn't want to be called a theologian. Theologians tend to be people who are kind of making sense of or finding meaning, all right, and explaining meaning. He wouldn't say that because it tends to be from a faith perspective. He is a biblical scholar and a Greek biblical scholar. He knows the Greek. And what I love about this, look at the size of it. See how big that is. The size of a Bible normally, isn't it? And it's just the New Testament, and that's because there's so much commentary there. People have asked me, what Bible do you recommend I read? What translation do you recommend? Well, I really recommend this. It's not a Bible, it's just the New Testament, because it lets you have the freedom of access to the texts yourself. What we have normally is a Bible that we're just given this Bible, and it's already been written, or translated rather, by the scholars who've made those decisions about meaning and translation in the translation. And they say, don't they, things can get lost in translation. and there can be different nuances of difference, and there can be biases and editorial bias in the translation. This is letting you just get to the text. It's telling you literally what the text means and also some historical context, so you kind of feel that it's coming alive to you, getting closer to the events, getting closer to Jesus and the meaning of his life and his words and his teaching. It's brilliant. So you'll want an example of that now. You say, oh, come on, then read us a bit. Well, I am going to read you some from, let's have a look, chapter 2. This is Matthew's Gospel, chapter 2, and it is the birth narrative. And this will give you an example of what I mean by you being able to access the text for yourself. Now, Jesus, having been born in Bethlehem of Judea in the time when Herod was king, look, Magians arrived in Jerusalem from eastern parts. And then there's a footnote, and the footnote says, Magians, men of the Zoroastrian priestly caste, of the Persians and Medes, largely associated in the Hellenistic mind with oneiromancy and astrology. And orionomancy actually means dreams, prophecies. People who prophesied on dreams or interpreted dreams. This is in the Bible. Now, there'll be people who say, oh, don't have anything to do with all of that. That's New Age stuff. No, it's not. Wasn't that what Joseph did? And here we have these magi who are, they say, oh, the three kings, don't they? As though they were just rulers and rich rulers of powerful men, but actually they were astronomers and mystics. They were finding meaning and prophecy from the stars, the conjunction of the stars, saying, where is the newborn king of the Judeans? For we saw his star at its rising. And there's a footnote again. It says, perhaps in the east, but the construction would be unusual. And then goes on. We saw his star at its rising and came to make obeisance to him. And then you have another footnote. See, obeisance is to prostrate oneself, to bow down before, to fall down in adoration, the classic Eastern gesture of abasement before a superior, originally a kiss of reverence. So see how much information that you get. I just love it because it just opens up how much the signs in the stars, astrology, was part of the birth narrative story of Jesus. And yet, they'll have their little Christmas nativities, won't they? They'll have the three kings coming in and bringing them gifts, but oh no, it's New Age, shouldn't be doing that. Shouldn't be looking into all the conjunction and the meaning of that. So if it was Venus and Jupiter, did we say? Venus and Jupiter? What does that mean? Venus, that's love, isn't it? Jupiter, isn't Jupiter power? What does that all represent? Those of you who are astronomers, astrologers, into astrology, know more about that. And the Lionsgate thing, this about it being a doorway. A doorway as an invitation to a higher vibrational experience. It talks about, in the Bible, it talks about he's come to give peace on earth, goodwill to men, and the angels are singing. It's as though heavens opened and there was this portal opening whereby this higher vibrational state of being, of love, peace, joy, came to earth and was made available. And that makes sense of the imagery that we get in the Bible also about Jesus saying, I'm stand at the door and knock. And in my Father's house are many mansions. This idea of a portal, an opening to the Christ experience. Another thing that's really interesting in this version, this translation, is that in Luke, as well as in Matthew, in Luke, when he talks about Jesus being born of Joseph, son of Joseph, son of, and it goes through the genealogy, the lineage, and takes you all the way back, to David, and then to Abraham, and to Adam, son of God. It says son of, Isaac, son of Abraham, son of whoever it was, Enoch, son of Adam, son of God. And just the way that it says son of God in that context makes sense of Christ being the first Adam and the last Adam, and the lineage being that family lineage then is whoever is in Christ. It's all humanity. It's this message, this universalism, universal sonship. And of course, it's not a physical lineage. This is another thing that occurred to me when I was reading this. It's not a physical lineage, because if you take the story, the Bible story of the birth of Jesus, and look at it theologically, you've got the virgin birth, haven't you? So it's not literally the seed of Joseph, like the DNA, that takes you back through that lineage. So it can't be literal and physical. It has to be a spiritual lineage that it's talking about. Maybe that's the purpose for having that virgin birth narrative in there, so that people wouldn't make the mistake of thinking it was simply tribal. And so in Bethlehem and Jerusalem today, you have this tribal warfare going on because it's physical, it's literal, about the rights to territory and land and inheritance. It's missing that sense that it's universal and it's a spiritual legacy that's through the human family, all of us being sons of God. Anyway, that was an interesting take on the story that we've been hearing a lot about at this time of year, and it was just a way of really touching base with you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I wish you a really happy and prosperous and healthy and blessed New Year.